What's up, everybody? Welcome into another YouTube live show. John Kurt here on the channel. Getting my notes pulled up here as we speak. We have college football here. I remember saying last time when I was finishing up the show, like, next time I talk to you guys, we're going to have actual college football here to discuss. And it was a great one, man. I tweeted this 10 of 10, no notes. Perfect start to the college football season with Nebraska losing and losing in the fashion that they did to Northwestern. It looked like every single Nebraska game that we've watched over the last 4 years in the Scott Frost era. Fantastic. Fantastic. And as a part of the tease here, I will actually tell you that Nebraska's loss has somewhat of an impact on the Big 12 title race. Okay. Now that's called a tease in the radio world where I come from. And I think that's a very good one that'll leave some people scratching their heads. But I'll tell you exactly why on the show today. Plus, look, I'm going to get into some actual football stuff here. You saw that Big 12 or a Big 12 school is picking up some college football playoff buzz. We're going to discuss that. And I'm going to give you my Big 12 predictions for the year, my predicted standings, something that I really cringe at doing. I hate doing because when you do it, most of the time what happens is what happened to Stuart Mandel, right? He puts some thought into his Big 12 preseason standings and just gets absolutely crushed for it because he did dare to be different. I will just give you a heads up. I'm not going to be as out there as Stuart Mandel was, but I'll do it because I feel somewhat obligated to. All right, being a Big 12 centric channel and with you guys being a Big 12 audience, even though I think like prediction radio is boring and kind of stupid because all it serves to do is just get you made fun of. I'm okay with that. I don't even mind the being made fun of part, but it just people get very worked up about it when none of us really know what we're talking about. If we did, we would be out in Vegas making a ton of money right now. But that's just not the reality. Most people are not very good at that. And if you can hit just barely over 50%, you're going to be making a lot of money in Vegas. So it doesn't really serve a great purpose, but I'll give it to you guys anyway at the risk of some of you all being frustrated and angry with me. But hey, that's how it goes, man. That's how the game goes. So I understand, and I will do it for you here today. Let me see what else I have on the outline. So it's going to be like, I would say, depending. I mean, you guys know you can dictate the chat. But my thought with this show was to kind of be like half and half actual football and then some realignment updates, some little things that have been sprinkled in. I did peruse the Pac-12 propaganda machine to see what they're saying right now. Went through the latest John Wilner mailbag to pick up some things. And there was a follow-up of sorts on the Oregon Big Ten meeting. One, I would say, pretty important detail about what was happening there and where that is all going. Plus, if you are a Big 12 fan, there was a very interesting article put up by 538 that was going through the potential expansion candidates for the Big Ten, right? With this idea that expansion is basically always open, like forever open for the Big Ten, that they will always be waiting for somebody. Who should they be evaluating? And the Big 12, Big 12 did not fare very well in this list. Bad news for Kansas fans. And I suppose anybody else in the Big 12 that had thoughts that they would be on their way to the Big Ten. Nobody else higher than, Kansas and Oklahoma State were as high as anybody, but it was not very high on the list. Mike Gundy, speaking of Oklahoma State, had some very interesting comments about Brett Yormark in his time getting to know the Big 12's new commissioner. Of course, Yormark was on campus at Oklahoma State within the last week. Maybe that was at least within the last 2 weeks. And Mike Gundy was very frank, I think, with a lot of things that he observed about Brett Yormark that should make you pretty excited. I took Gundy's comments to be pretty exciting in terms of what he had to say about Yormark. And I've got a little note on Big 12 Twitter again out there fighting some battles for all of us, keeping us from having to do it all ourselves, which is very much appreciated. Thank you, Big 12 Twitter. Thank you, B. Yizzo, Mr. Yormark. That one was for our web. I'm not sure if our web's in here yet, but I got my B. Yizzo reference in here early in the show today. So that's what we have for today. Heading into week one. Man, week one of the football season is here. And frankly, I'll talk about this more at the end of the show, but I may not be able to do a show on Wednesday night and would have to do it on Thursday, which means it would basically be going on concurrently with some Big 12 football because we've got Big 12 football happening on Thursday. So that's how damn close we are to the season right now. Everybody get excited for that. It is going to be great. I am thrilled that we have actual football coming up to talk about. But I actually want to lead with this. Now, I'm going to talk about the Big 12 team that generated some playoff buzz. All of this was really about the week 0 Saturday that was, because everybody was focused on Nebraska, Northwestern, not a whole ton else in the college football scene. And we had College Game Day for the first time. They produce a game day show leading into it. So everything is pretty much coming from that. So we're going to start from the week 0 college football Saturday and kind of branch out from there, because there are Big 12 tentacles to what happened between Nebraska and Northwestern. First, let me remind you, I would be remiss if I did not remind you this. You can dictate what is being talked about here in the chat and on the channel by donating. You click the $ below the chat box. Obviously, the chat is going to fill up as it is right now. I don't have a chance to look at everything throughout the chat if you are new here. So click the $ below the chat box where it says say something to make a donation, and make sure that your question or comment is heard here on the show. It will pin it up at the top for me, supersede everything else in the chat. And also support what I'm doing here to bring you Big 12 content each and every week. So it is much appreciated as always. Joe, first out of the chute. Joe with an expansion or realignment related question here. Joe says Big 12 adding anyone this year. Well, thank you for the donation, Joe. Thank you for being here. This year, again, I think I had this similar question to this recently where I was saying, all right, let's break down this timeline. So if we're going to say this year, like rest of the calendar year, we're in August. We'd be looking towards, September, October, November, December. So like in the next 4 months. I know that the word from Canzano was don't expect anything on a Pac-12 TV deal until after Labor Day at the very earliest. That is the first thing that needs to happen before we find out what the Pac-12 is, what those schools in the Pac-12 are going to do. Will it satisfy them? And then we've got to extrapolate it out from there. We also have the season starting, which is going to muck things up a little bit in terms of just time commitments for everybody. So, I don't know. Again, it's a fool's errand to be making predictions like that in realignment. I don't sense that the tea leaves right now are telling me that anything is coming really soon. It feels like it's slowed down a little bit. We know that it's not slowing down in the big picture, like in the abstract, but right now, I would say no. I would lean no. But that doesn't mean that it won't happen within the next calendar year. If you're talking calendar year, now that's a much different discussion, because then we have an entire offseason to play out. And last year, if you would have said hey, Texas and Oklahoma left, is there going to be another major move? I think a lot of people would have said probably no. But then there was, obviously, with USC and UCLA. So within the span of a year, you know what? I might go ahead and just lean yes on that. But it feels like the Pac-12 TV contract and everything right now is dragging a bit. And then we have the season coming, which will complicate matters, I would have to assume, at least on some level. So I'll lean no for calendar year and lean yes for, how do I lean? Yeah, that'd be right. Calendar year, right? The rest of 2022, I would lean no. And then if we're going until August of 2023, I'll lean slightly yes. I'll lean slightly yes on that the Big 12 can pick off at the very least Arizona, maybe find them a travel partner as well if it's going to be San Diego State or somebody else from the Pac-12. But that's perhaps me looking through a Big 12 colored glasses. Whereas on the other side, you have some of the Pac-12 reporters typically looking through slightly Pac-12 tinted glasses. That's going to be my slight Big 12 tint here that I'll give you in answering that question, Joe. So I'm not certain about it, but that's my lean right now. Appreciate the question. Appreciate you being here. All right, Julius Maximus. What's up, Julius? It's been a minute. I am glad to see you here. One of our great BYU fans here on this channel. Julius says, howdy, John. It's time to kick off. I would like to wish all Big 12 teams the best of luck for the upcoming season, but most of all, go BYU Cougs. Hey, shout out to the BYU Cougs, Julius. It is almost football season. We are almost here. And yes, I will extend a hearty best of luck. Good luck to everybody in the Big 12 conference. We can all play nice right now, right? Even the Kansas Jayhawks, Lance Leipold and company. Go get them. Go get them week 1, baby. That's where I'm at right now. Everybody's positive. We don't have to get negative and into the weeds right now. Hope springs eternal. Everybody is going to be awesome. That's the official stance of the John Kurtz YouTube channel here on the precipice of week 1. But sincerely, thank you, Julius, for the donation. Thank you for being here and supporting the channel, as you are one of the frequenters here of the channel. So thank you. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate that. R-Web. What's up, R-Web? Hope you got my B Izzo there at the beginning of it. R-Web says, how about that Pac-12 bowl record the last 2 years? Cheers, B Izzo. Well, I'll get to that because I mentioned that in the outline. But real quick, R-Web is referring to Big 12 Twitter getting after the Pac-12 again. Big 12 Twitter tweeted out the bowl win percentage of every conference over the last 2 years, which is great because, I mean, look, you can look at that and say, well, hey, what about selective in points on that, right? Last 2 years. But that's exactly it. The Big 12 is trying to frame some of the narrative here. And go ahead and I'm sorry, I'm trying to bring this up. So the Big 12, as I've mentioned, is trying to like fight some of its own fights via its own marketing and Twitter account, which is a great way to do it because so much of our opinion these days is formulated based on these little bite-sized things that we find on Twitter. So it tweets out bowl win percentage over the last 2 seasons. The Big 12 is at the top with an 83% percentage there. And normally, like, I would cringe at this a little bit and be like, all right, bowl win percentage doesn't really mean that much, especially now it's getting harder and harder to gauge what bowl games mean, who is playing, who's not, who actually cares, who doesn't. You can have games like K-State LSU last year where LSU had like 35 available players. I mean, it was crazy and not something to put a ton of stock into. But the thing that I love about it, it's not that the Big 12 is at the top. And the reason that I won't cringe that much about it, it's the fact that the Pac-12 is at the bottom with a 0-0-0 win percentage, which is what our web was talking about there. 0-0-0. They have not won a bowl game the last 2 years. And so normally when I would say like, hey, if you're just doing this to prop up that the Big 12 has the best bowl win percentage over the last 2 years, like that's fairly lame to me because, again, pretty meaningless exhibition games at this point in time. However, when it's singling out you at the top and the Pac-12 at the bottom, I like that because it's just finding little ways to dig at the Pac-12. Yes, selective endpoints. Use them to your advantage. This is the world we live in today. You have to find ways to do that. That, to me, is just good marketing from the Big 12 and showing once again that there is legitimate fight here from this conference, and they're going to utilize whatever channels they actually have and have direct access to in order to do that. So you don't need to wait on College Game Day or ESPN or Fox, whoever, these big machines to give you the publicity and propaganda. I mean, maybe that's the word, propaganda, the Big 12 propaganda machine. But frankly, it should be the Big 12 propaganda machine if it's actually coming from the Big 12, right? That makes sense. Propaganda coming from the Big 12. So here for it. Love that. Thank you for the shout out for that, our web. Glenn, what's up, Glenn? Glenn says, does the Big 12 have an automatic bowl bid? Well, so the Big 12 has a lot of bowl tie-ins. See if I can pull those up. I was actually just looking at a list. I think it was Heartland College Sports' list of Big 12 bowl predictions for the year. I don't know that I'm going to get what I want from this. Oh, lovely. It's the so this is collegefootballnews.com, and it gives you the like the slideshow. The most annoying thing that you can possibly do on the internet is put together a slideshow where you have to click it 4 times to actually get to the information that you want. All right, so yeah, of course, the Sugar Bowl being number 1 as the automatic Big 12 tie-in, and then beyond that, Alamo Bowl, Cheez-It Bowl, the Mercari Texas Bowl. That's a new sponsor there. Liberty Bowl, Guaranteed Rate Bowl. And then there is also the potential for the Armed Forces Bowl and the First Responders Bowl if you have enough teams there. So that's the rundown of like Big 12 bowl tie-ins, Big 12 champion. If they're not going to the college football playoff, your highest team is headed to the Sugar Bowl. That would be the tie-in there. And then everything else as follows that I just rattled off. So I would guess that you were meaning like New Year's 6, which would still be Sugar. The Big 12 has had that relationship with the Sugar Bowl. And why it was pretty enticing there for a minute when they were like, hey, I mean, maybe the Big 12 fills a spot in the Rose Bowl. And you're talking about, all right, is this going to be like Sugar and Rose? It'd be pretty sweet. But for right now, it's Sugar for the Big 12 as far as at the top. So thank you for the donation. Thank you for the question, Glenn. Boom to the Sooner. Boom to the Sooner says, okay, you know what? I'm going to hold off on Boom to the Sooner for just 1 second because it's a perfect lead into how I really wanted to start the show here today, Boom to the Sooner. So give me 1 sec. Robbie, thank you for being here, Robbie. Robbie says 2 a.m. and the Cats looking in practices to make a run at the Big 12 championship game. What's up, Robbie? Thanks for being here. Appreciate you as always. I need to start using 2 a.m. instead of 9 a.m. Obviously, that's a reference to Adrian Martinez. He was number 9 at Nebraska, so 9 a.m. was always used. Now he's wearing number 2 at K-State, so 2 a.m. I need to get that lodged into my brain up here. But yes, I think K-State will make a run at the Big 12 championship game. Whether or not they get there, that's the question. And speaking of teases, you can find out what my official prediction on that is here later on in the show today. I'll give you that before I'm out of here. So thank you, Robbie. Appreciate you as always. Boom to the Sooner. Boom to the Sooner, kicking us off the right way here. Says, boom to the Sooner. If your team was up on Northwestern by 11 points in the second half with momentum, would you go with the onside kick? You know, this is a tough one, boom to the Sooner. This might be the most difficult question I've ever been asked on this channel. I'm going to have to sit here and really contemplate this. 11-point lead, all the momentum, in control of the game. Do I go with an onside kick? No, I don't. I don't actually go with an onside kick. That was a very difficult, laborious decision to come to. I would not do that. But, I'm not Scott Frost. Look, I don't have the resume of Scott Frost. I am not a guy with the resume of a coach who needs to win 50 straight games to even come close to Bo Pelini's win percentage at Nebraska. In fact, that actually wouldn't get it done. That is a real stat. If Scott Frost won his next 50 games in a row at Nebraska, he would still have a worse record at Nebraska than Bo Pelini had, a guy who, again, got fired. He also is more than 20 games behind Bill Callahan. It would take 22 straight to catch Bill Callahan at Nebraska right now for Scott Frost. So I don't have that kind of coaching acumen or ability, unfortunately, boom to the Sooner. So it means that my opinion doesn't matter as much as Scott Frost, but he did it. Look, the onside kick in that game was brutal. I wonder about, they were talking about on the broadcast. I'm sure it is something that is like, hey, if we get this certain look, we're going to go with it. We're going to roll with it. But I would have to imagine that goes through Scott Frost at some level, right? And even if he's giving everybody just absolute power to do that at any point, whatever, then that to me comes back on you as well. Even if you're not the person that made the direct decision in that moment, at some point, if you're not calling plays, you better be paying attention to that. And what has been one of the biggest issues for Nebraska over the last couple of years in the Scott Frost era, it's special teams. And they specifically carved out a special teams coach now this year to help take care of that. And here it is again, special teams bugaboo early on. Look, there are a million reasons to make fun of Nebraska here and a lot of angles with this game, which I think most Big 12 fans here would join in on that fun. I don't know that anybody really particularly loves Nebraska that much, even schools that were only around for the Big 12 era and therefore only caught – 5, 6, 7 years of Nebraska actually being good before they fell off a cliff. But if you're a Big 8 squad and you've been around for a long time and you remember the days of Nebraska 70-balling everybody and stockpiling scholarship players because there were no scholarship limits, so you would hoard up the second and third tier players that would typically go to all these other schools and keep anybody from having a chance, then you have no love lost for Nebraska, and you do not feel bad for them mired in such a ridiculously awful stretch right now, which they are. And there were some fantastic moments on Twitter of people taking advantage of this, man. I mean, the dunking on Nebraska was strong, very strong on Saturday. I'm going to have to pull some of these up. The Big Sky Conference, out of nowhere, the Big Sky Conference came off the top rope at Nebraska, which was crazy. Let me get to, here we go, the Big Sky. So the Big Sky has a back and forth where somebody says Nebraska football is going to be playing in the @Big Sky Conference soon. And the Big Sky Conference official Twitter account says, nah, we good. We good. We don't need Nebraska. The Big Sky is saying no to Nebraska. Big Ten power, legend and leader, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, getting shot down there by the Big Sky. So then a Nebraska fan comes back and says, how many national championships does the Big Sky Conference have? And tweets a picture of Nebraska's trophy case with 5 national championships. And the Big Sky says, we have 6, with the last coming in 2010, which is much more recent than 1997. I mean, that is so well done from the Big Sky, man. Kudos to them on that. We had a message board genius post where they're singling out a Nebraska dude on a message board saying that he was so mad that he spent $10,000 to go to Dublin to watch his team lose that he threw his beer at the players, which, seems not great, not like a great move, not a great way to endear yourself as a person or a fan. And then there was even this too. The offensive line coach at Northwestern tweeted after the game, and to think we only puked 4 times all camp, which obviously is in reference to Scott Frost's ridiculous comments about how much the offensive line was puking during fall camp leading up to the season here. So all sides were taking shots here. It doesn't seem like Scott Frost is a very well-liked dude from the way all this comes down from all corners and everybody here. And you know what? it, how could you possibly think anything else when he just throws his dudes under the bus in press conferences over and over again? And he already did that after this game. Let me find the specific quote here. Yeah. Mark Whipple, his new offensive coordinator. Scott Frost said after the game in the post-game presser, quote, "I think our offensive staff has to learn you've got to be a little more creative in this league." Asinine on so many levels. One, you just hired the guy. He was just at Pitt, where he orchestrated an offense with a Heisman finalist quarterback and the Bolitnikoff award winner at receiver. The dude can coach offense. And oh, by the way, Casey Thompson threw for 355 yards. They had 465 yards of offense. His defense gave up 528 yards, and he had a boneheaded special teams mistake again. It's on Frost at this point. Like, it is clear that Nebraska has systemic issues that are just on Frost. And this has a lot of Big 12 tentacles to it here. One piece of it that's a little, I think, more easy for people to follow and that more people would probably guess, like, oh, that's the Big 12 angle here, is Nebraska now is in this mode where I think most fans are now going to be like, look, Frost has to go. We did this thing, cut back his salary, make massive changes, hit the portal hard, do all this stuff. Basically did everything short of firing Frost and starting over. And now the season began in the exact same way that it ended and has gone for Nebraska for the last 4 years, which is losing a close game in which they were in control to a team that has far inferior talent, this time being the Northwestern Wildcats. I mean, the fact that they gave up over 500 yards to that offense of Northwestern is astounding. And so Nebraska fans now are already circulating a rumor online like, oh, we've got $60 million in our pocket to go make the next head coaching hire. We've got 60 mil to go get the next guy. So we can get whoever it is that we want. Now, Matt Rule is one of the names that I hear Nebraska fans throw out quite a bit, which obviously will be of interest to Big 12 fans and Baylor fans particularly. But beyond that, it's the names like Luke Fickell. Nebraska fans think that would be a legitimate option, which to me is pretty laughable. But Luke Fickell has been thrown out. Matt Campbell, a little more sensical, but I still have a very hard time seeing that would be anything Matt Campbell would want to deal with right now. The one advantage there being that you are in the Big Ten, right? And you do have a lot of resources at Nebraska. So if it's Campbell worrying about his long-term future conference affiliation wise, I guess maybe, but I don't know. Nebraska doesn't feel like the job for him to me. But then the other one is Lance Leipold. And this is, one of the trigger points for me where I think Lance Leipold is a very good, I think he is a good coach. I think it remains to be seen just how good, but he's got a long path to get Kansas even back to respectability. I don't think he's making some jump to like 7 wins this year, which it seems like some think, or they think he's the second, third, fourth best coach in this conference. That to me is too steep on the praise. But if he were to have some big breakout year this year for Kansas, does Lance Leipold then hop onto Nebraska's radar? Because that's been another coach mentioned there. But to me, and again, I'm a K-State guy. You see the poster behind me. You know where my sensibilities lie here. But to me, the real significance about that game as it relates to the Big 12 and the Big 12 title race is what it means for Adrian Martinez at K-State. And I think it means the reason for optimism. It's not confirming anything because we have not seen Adrian play yet at K-State. I realize that. But the case that I've made, and many K-State fans have made, and the K-State coaches and players will make for Adrian Martinez being much better at K-State than he was at Nebraska, I think now has more wind in its sails based on what we just saw. And when I say that case has more wind in its sails, I mean that it looks like the problems at Nebraska are pretty systemic. And you can dump in whatever quarterback it is you want. Casey Thompson was really good at Texas actually last year when he was healthy. He dealt with an injury, but when he was healthy, he was really good. Led the Big 12 in passing touchdowns. He had a great first half, looked pretty good most of the game, but then the same old Nebraska issues come back to bite them. Boneheaded coaching, special teams mistake. And yes, Thompson did contribute with a late turnover. But Nebraska fans wanted to frame this as like, well, Adrian Martinez was a turnover machine. He's the quarterback. He's the guy leading the charge. That's the reason we have all these issues. Whereas I would say, well, no, Nebraska actually last year you had the worst Power 5 offensive line in football. You had a bad coaching staff, a bad coach, and Scott Frost, who's not the greatest at taking accountability for things. And you're asking Adrian Martinez to do too much, and it's getting him hurt. And he's playing through multiple injuries. And because there was not enough else there to help supplement the offense, he's having to go out there with a broken jaw and a torn labrum, right? That would be my case. It's a K-State. He's going to have Deuce Vaughn to shoulder some of the load. He's going to have a much, much better offensive line. He's going to have a head coach that's put his last 3 starting quarterbacks into the NFL. And now he's living near his girlfriend, by the way, who goes to K-State. A lot of things that lend me optimism toward Adrian Martinez at K-State. And watching that game that Nebraska just played, seeing that it was a carbon copy of every game that they played with Adrian at quarterback, I thought, man, that makes me feel better about the case that I just made, that Adrian, you take him out of that environment and get him into what's been a very good environment. When Skylar Thompson was healthy, he really thrived under Chris Klieman. And look at him now. He was the best. Barstool Sports, of all places, just named him the NFL preseason MVP. He's been set up for success playing under Chris Klieman. All of these things lead me to believe he's going to have a big year this year for K-State. K-State already has 6 first-team All-Big 12 selections on the preseason All-Big 12 squad. We know that there's some high-end talent there. That doesn't include Adrian Martinez. If he's there to be the trigger man on this team that has a lot of high-profile players in the league, then yeah, I think K-State absolutely is in that conversation for the Big 12 title this year. So I'm just feeling slightly more bullish on my prediction that Adrian Martinez will have a big year and be much better than he was at Nebraska. That to me is what the significance of that game was. And so draped and drenched in sarcasm, of course, in the way that I painted on Twitter, because, I'm going to do me. That was really what I was seeing. If you want like the serious take, it's that there's credence that's been lended now to the theory that K-State fans, coaches, etc., would have about what Adrian Martinez is going to do. Okay, I'm behind on donations. I got my K-State propaganda out of the way today, which, look, you guys know, I don't typically hit you with a bunch of that. I don't try and go out of my way to do it just for the sake of doing it. But I think here it relates enough to the Big 12 title race that it was worth mentioning. And everybody I know here on this channel is interested in the Big 12 title race. All right, Steve Knows Loans. What's up, Steve Knows Loans? Have not seen that name before. Thank you for being here, and thank you for donating to the channel here today. Steve Knows Loans says, with respect to Big 12 realignment, is the conference in active conversations with Arizona State and Utah? What other schools are talking to the Big 12? Well, I don't think anybody would be able to tell you officially, hey, these schools are in contact or having talks right now with the Big 12. But I think the Oregon situation recently is a decent case study in like how some of this stuff can go down. Like, report leaks out that Oregon's having an initial meeting with the Big Ten, and there's been a follow-up since that said Phil Knight was not there. That was the update I was going to pass along to you today from Matt Brown, who's a college football reporter. He says, I can confirm this meeting happened. Phil Knight was not there. This was a lawyer and consultant meeting. Based on what I've been told, preliminary discussions is a fair way to describe it. So preliminary discussions going on there. Have there been calls, texts, emails, like some initial conversations levied by the Big 12? Well, if you ask George Kliavkov, the answer would be yes. He said famously now at his press conference at Pac-12 Media Days that he was shielding grenades from the Big 12 constantly, and that teams had been, or presidents, athletic directors, etc., had been sending texts and emails to their counterparts in the Pac-12 that had been stored in some sort of file of this, that they all send them to George, and good old George, when he's not busy kicking butt, he puts them in a Google Doc or something, and they all laugh about them. I don't know what they're going to do with them. But so theoretically, yes, Big 12 teams have reached out. How much conversations have happened, it's really hard to say. I would just tell you that the most likely would be the four corner schools: Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, Colorado. In this order, Arizona seems most rearing to go in terms of coming to the Big 12. Colorado probably second. And then Utah maybe third. Utah, Arizona State seem a little less interested at this point. Arizona State in particular has seemingly been fairly vocal about Pac-12 unity and that sort of thing. So that's really where it's at. No one, you're not, realignment. Again, the lesson in realignment has been when things are really quiet, generally something is happening. Like Texas, Oklahoma going to the SEC happened in the absolute shadows, and nobody would not have leaked if not Texas A&M found out and got mad about it and threw it to the Houston Chronicle. USC and UCLA, they waited. There was a great story in The Athletic talking about 5 people basically knew. They kept it under wraps until it was right about to break, and then obviously John Wilner reports it. So the actual real serious conversations, we just won't know the answers to that. And also I'm not someone who's claiming to have the best Big 12 sources around or anything like that, just in the sense of full transparency and honesty. So most likely 4 corner schools. Arizona seems to be the most interested in the Big 12 theoretically right now. There's the most chatter that comes from over in that world. Jason Scheer is a good Twitter follow on that front, who runs the Arizona 24/7 site. And is anybody else talking? I mean, I would imagine speaking of Oregon, having conversations, like I would imagine Oregon, Washington, perhaps there's been some level of like preliminary talk there, or at least just a feeler. I don't even understand. I don't know exactly how all of this would work, who would be having those conversations, and what the context of them would be like. But I would think if Oregon at this point has to just be talking to basically everybody, evaluating every option because of the position that they're in. So I wouldn't sit here and tell you it's likely that there's been no talk there at all. Maybe through some back channel, there's been some sort of exploration there because Oregon may have to use it in case of emergency there with the Big 12. Nick, thank you for the donation. What's up, Nick? Nick says Texas was a big reason the Southwestern Conference died. Was the reason why Nebraska, Missouri, A&M, and Colorado left the Big 12, and their jump to the SEC with Oklahoma may have spurred the Big 10 getting USC, UCLA. Am I off to blame Texas for all this mess? I would just say, well, I get the parallel you're drawing there. The one that I would say, like, the Big 10 may have still moved at some point to USC and UCLA, or at least the USC portion of it. Like the Big 10, I don't know that just because Texas and Oklahoma left for the SEC that the Big 10 was going to not ever expand and do this to the Pac-12. Maybe they expedited the process there. Maybe they made it happen faster and sped up this timeline. So, yes, in a way, Texas, you can make the case, would be responsible for all of it. I don't think there's really much of a doubt that Texas was a main reason that the Southwest Conference died, a main reason that the Big 12 splintered multiple times and eventually almost broke before Texas did leave for the SEC. They've been a huge problem, man. I mean, they've been a huge problem. I just don't think anybody can deny that at this point in time. I need to read John Wilner interviewed Chuck Ninus, who obviously has spent a lot of time with the Big 12, was the interim commish there for a while. And I believe he spoke to like Texas being a problem in the boardroom, some in that piece. If not, I'm misremembering, and I saw something else where someone was quoted as saying that recently. It's no surprise. The meme that I saw that was the Grim Reaper going from a door that had Southwest Conference and then a door that had old Big 12, a door that had new Big 12, and then to the SEC. That's very true. Like Texas comes in, tries to throw their weight around, and which they have like kind of the brand equity to do that. So I suppose don't hate the player, hate the game. But yes, it has certainly caused a ton of problems. You have every right to be very angry with them for the way things played out in the Big 12. And if you're a Southwest Conference fan, absolutely that too. So no, I would not tell you that you're off. I don't think you're off. And you can do that if you're Texas. And it's obviously worked out for them from a financial standpoint and still being what everybody considers to be one of the top 3 or 4 brands in college football, but it's also not paying off for them when it comes to wins and losses. So maybe they need to reevaluate that strategy at some point and dump their time, energy, and resources into something else. And maybe the SEC is the humbling experience they'll need on that, because I'll give them some news. When you enter that boardroom right now with Alabama, Georgia, LSU, like everybody in the SEC right now, you are not going to be the talk of the town there. And hell, you're bringing on Oklahoma, who's been your daddy and the conference's daddy forever now, since Bob Stoops got there in 1999 or 98. I forget which one it was, 98 or 99, for Stoops and company at Oklahoma. So Texas has a rude awakening coming on that front. But I do not think you are off at all there to blame them basically for everything. Boom to the Sooner. What's up, Boom to the Sooner? How do you feel about your Cats in that early Big 12 game versus Oklahoma in Norman? I think it'll be a great game. I love getting that game early. For K-State as opposed to late, because there's more new happening with OU. New coach, new quarterback. They're still feeling a lot of things out. Now, they will at that point have already played Nebraska, which I was about to say like a team with a pulse, Nebraska. I guess we can debate, especially with the conversation we just had, how much of a pulse Nebraska actually has. But I would much rather get Oklahoma at the beginning of the year than the end of the year, when they have a chance to really sort everything out. Totally new coaching staff, all that. The connection between Levy and Dylan Gabriel is going to have to form. I would rather go ahead and play that game early on. Plus, it seems like K-State's had some luck with those games early in the season in Norman. 2012, K-State winning there. 2014, I believe that was still pretty early in the season. And then 2020 was definitely early in the season when K-State won the last time that they were in Norman. So almost from a karmic standpoint there, or just like a historic standpoint there, I like that game being earlier on. I might be going to that game. We'll see if I can finagle that. I'm trying to finagle my way to that game, Boom to the Sooner. So I will let you know I will make sure to let you know if I do wind up in Norman for K-State OU. What's up, Joe? Thank you for the donation, Joe. Joe says K-State has always been a hard pill for OU to swallow. Yes, very true. K-State has been kind of a thorn in Oklahoma's side, and even in some of the games that they haven't won. You know, I mean, there was a Baker Mayfield pulled one out in Manhattan out of the fire in what was a game that K-State was right there for most of it. They won by a touchdown really late. I think it was Rodney Anderson had a late backbreaking touchdown run that won the game for OU there when it was tied. K-State won in 2020. K-State won in 2019. K-State won in 2012, 2014. So in terms of like teams consistently beating Oklahoma, yeah, K-State has been about as good as anybody in the Big 12 doing that, which if you are making the case for K-State being a legitimate Big 12 contender, that would be a part of the case, no doubt. Joe, what's up, Joe? Joe says, whatever you KU folks are smoking or toking must be some good stuff. You aren't going to the Big 10. Joe, I love it. I love the smack talk there, Joe. You know that I have tried to say that in, I would say, gentler terms, even if through a lot of sarcasm, maybe gentler terms, that I've tried to say that to Kansas and their fans for a long time. But I thought the 538 piece really did a good job of putting some of that in perspective, okay? So 538 piece, they put together tiers of expansion candidates for the Big Ten based on a ton of different categories. They break it all down. You can read this whole article. I tweeted about it earlier this week at JL Kurtz if you want to see it. There's a sports component, there's a fit component, there's a market component, and they combine it all together to get a composite score. All right. And tier 1 is only Notre Dame. Notre Dame in a tier of itself. The tier 2, which is called no brainers, would be North Carolina, Oregon, Florida State, and Washington. That's the next tier. So there's like the top 5, according to 538's analysis on who would be Big Ten expansion candidates. Tier 3, Clemson, Utah, Miami, Stanford, Cal. All right, so now at this point, we're 10 schools deep. There's your top 10 expansion candidates for the Big Ten. And then you go into Tier 4, which is already called strategic reaches. We're already 10 schools deep here. Virginia, Arizona State, Duke, Missouri, Pitt, Colorado, and then we get to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State actually ahead of Kansas on this list in terms of Big Ten fit. Oklahoma State, Arizona, TCU, also ahead of Kansas in terms of fit here. Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, Kansas, West Virginia. So West Virginia right there with the exact same score, 42, their same composite score as Kansas. So say what you will about 538. I don't know how much stock you put into it, how much you respect it or not, but, you know, Nate Silver and company, they're pretty good at crunching the numbers with a lot of these things, or at least certainly make compelling cases here. And it makes a lot of sense to me. Big 12 basketball is great. Kansas basketball is excellent. But basketball is not the currency of conference realignment. And that's a tough break. As I put it, KU would be in the Big Ten, according to that, if the Big Ten were to expand to 38, if they were to expand to 38 teams. Also, I mean, interesting that Oklahoma State picks up the top spot in terms of the Big 12 there, because the other one here is like TCU has been on the upward swing lately in terms of momentum and chatter, like deep chatter in conference realignment worlds that like, hey, actually getting into Dallas-Fort Worth would be appealing to the Big Ten, and TCU might be on like I wouldn't say a short list, but like a medium list for Big Ten expansion. But even they were behind. They were behind Oklahoma State here, and a little bit ahead of Kansas. They had a 45 score as opposed to a 42. Oklahoma State had a 46. So really, you know, Oklahoma State, TCU considered pretty similar there. Now, this is where I would quibble with 538's analysis there and say that like the Big Ten, even though they're not in the state of Oklahoma already, so it's not like you're doubling up on that presence, I still think DFW there would outweigh anything Oklahoma State has to offer in terms of being a more consistent and better football program than TCU right now. But interesting numbers nonetheless. If you want to donate, get your question or comment heard here on the chat. You got about 20 more minutes. You can do so by clicking the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you get in touch with me on the show. You control the comment or the content with your question or comment. I will read it. If you do donate there to get it on there, it'll tack it up at the top for me. And also, it's a way to support this channel where I bring you Big 12 content each and every week, multiple times per week. I don't think did I tell you all to like the video? I don't know that I've told anybody to like the video. And I can kind of tell by the numbers I probably didn't. So if you can go like the video too, that is totally free. It's just one click. If you give me a like on the video, that helps out with the algorithm. That is a free way that you can help support this channel and this Big 12 community as well. What's up, Juan? Juan says, shout out to my Big Ten at Red Wine wanting Houston to go to the Big Ten. We probably wouldn't turn it down, but I doubt the invite comes. Go Cougs. Yeah, I don't think Houston would be turning down a Big Ten invite. Look, if anybody got a Big Ten or SEC invite at this point, you would be insane to turn it down. You have to accept it. The finances of it, like, absolutely, you have to accept it. So there would be no hard feelings on with this guy, at least, if that were to happen. Now, I'm also with you. I don't think that is going to happen. But even the 538 article, Juan, mentioned, like, hey, Houston is intriguing because they are such a large. Here, I'll read it to you. It says, and in the very long term, Houston, which will soon join the Big 12, could be interesting as a big public university in a very big market. Time to join the AAU, Cougars. That's what the 538 article said. So you got a little bit of a shout out there. Thank you, Juan. Best of luck to your Cougars this year. Thank you for popping in. All right, let's get to some actual football here. The reason, well, at least what I teased the video with today is that there is a Big 12 team getting some college football playoff buzz, a little bit of college football playoff run, and it was from College Game Day. Now, I'll admit, sometimes with Game Day, it feels like they get off on trying to be out there with some of the preseason predictions. Like, I know, for instance, Kirk Herbstreit predicted Nebraska to win the Big Ten West, which doesn't look great after their loss to Northwestern in the exact same fashion that they lost basically every single game last year and going 3-9. There have been some wild predictions in the past. It was, what year was that? Like, Desmond Howard had Baylor, I think, winning the Big 12, and it was before, that was like at the beginning of the Matt Rule era when they were still like a year or two away, or was it maybe after Rule? Couple of years ago that happened, and it was not a very good Baylor team. It was one of the down years there. So there have been some bizarre predictions before. And I know that someone told me that the Bear on College Game Day, I didn't hear this part, but had mentioned TCU as being like a dark horse to win the Big 12 or threaten to get to the playoff. It was something like that. And I just thought, okay, I mean, look, no offense to TCU, but I am not thinking anywhere within that realm for the Horned Frogs right now. But both Herbstreit and Desmond Howard picked Baylor to go to the college football playoff. So Baylor is your team that's now picking up the steam in terms of the national media as being a playoff contender here. Now, it does not shock me at all that Baylor would be kind of the default favorite in an open year in the Big 12 to win the Big 12 championship. I totally get that. They obviously won it last year. It's been a program that's been able to have very high highs consistently under multiple different coaches lately. And they seemingly have, in my opinion, I would say right now, I am as high on Dave Aranda as any other coach in the Big 12. Let me put it that way. There's not, if you gave me the option to pick any Big 12 coach right now, just start from scratch, it would be hard for anybody to beat out Dave Aranda in terms of who I would be picking there. So you combine that with a talented quarterback who did get his feet wet and play last year. It's not like a total returning starter situation, really, but a guy who did play quite a bit last year. I get why you would go, man, the Big 12 seems pretty wide open. There are some things I can trust here in Baylor with Aranda. Very good in the trenches, the experience from last year in a program that's been used to getting to the Big 12 championship. Get it. Predicting them to get to the playoff. I mean, frankly, predicting anybody from the Big 12 to get to the college football playoff this year, to me, feels off. I would not do that. And look, I love the conference. I certainly hope somebody ascends and does that. But this feels very much to me like you're going to have 3 or 4 teams with 2 or 3 losses at the end of the year atop the Big 12. And it's going to get a little murky in terms of who's going to the conference championship game, and that you'll have a 2 or 3 loss Big 12 champion. It very, very much feels like that kind of year in the league. So I was surprised because of that to hear the love for Baylor there to the playoff. Now, I'm going to embrace it. And again, narratives are important. Narratives mean something. If you've got guys at ESPN rooting for their prediction for Baylor to be in the college football playoff, that can't hurt. That certainly cannot hurt the conference at all. That's just probably a bridge too far for me right now with Baylor this year. But it's great, and I was very, very happy to see that. And I think it at least deserves mention here because again, another reason that I was pretty taken aback by that is it feels like the national narrative, rightfully so, in my opinion, has been this is not going to be a league that produces a playoff contender. This is not going to be a league that really threatens to get into the 14 playoff. And even if we want to expand that into the 4 teams that are coming in, I still think Houston is obviously primed for a very good season. I think BYU is primed for a very good season. I still think Cincinnati will have a very good season. I still think UCF will have a pretty good season. But we don't have like a Cincinnati 2021 level contender in that group either. So I am not anticipating this being a year where the Big 12 is going to really compete for that. And you know that the national media is just waiting to be like, oh, yeah, well, there's not really like a great pick here. Oklahoma's a little bit down. They have a new coach, new quarterback, and all that. So we're not even going to mess with the Oklahoma to the college football playoff projections here. I figured everybody with any sort of media connection would just completely write the league off as far as that goes. So it's good. I think that's a good thing. And if Baylor is going to be the team to pull it along that way for the league, it will be a very good thing. If they can even just remain in the conversation, that's a part of it. If you can just have somebody in the playoff conversation going into those last few games of the regular season, and then, hey, into the conference championship game, because we talk a lot about the views, the number of viewers. It was over 8 million that watched the Big 12 championship game last year in that 11 a.m. window. It was because of the implications there with Baylor and Oklahoma State both being like in the college football playoff discussion, especially Oklahoma State, but Baylor also. And that nets a lot of viewers. You need to be relevant there at the end of the year, have legitimate stakes attached to the game beyond just the conference championship game. And that will really help you out. And obviously, any of that momentum that you can push that way toward producing that by the end of the year is very good. So we have a little bit of it right now for Baylor with the college game day talk there. Now, as it comes to how I see the Big 12 playing out, okay, maybe you could tell by the way that I've discussed this, but I will once again preface all of this with I hate doing this. I don't like doing like prediction radio. I come from the radio world. This is a YouTube channel. I get it. But I don't love like just doing prediction shows and all that because you're going to be wrong a lot. It's going to get people angry. It's a fool's errand, and it's not really that interesting. I'm much more about like the storylines and narratives and what's going on beyond just, I think X team is going to do this. But I there's an obligation basically to do it because pretty much everybody does. So let me get it to you. All right. Here is what I see. I think Baylor will win the Big 12. I would go with Baylor as your Big 12 champ. It is basically the case that I just laid out to you. One, I think Aranda is an excellent coach. Two, I like Blake Shapen a lot. If we're talking about like quarterback coach combination, I think you need a very good one to win the league. At least, well, I mean, I say that Baylor, we can argue last year if Baylor had a very good quarterback situation, it was certainly passable, maybe not very good, but generally you're going to want a really good quarterback and coach combination to do that. I really like Baylor's. I think Shapen has a very high ceiling. I think he had a higher ceiling than Bohannon. I think they made the right call in what they did in terms of their starting quarterback. And even with the timing of it, did right by Gary Bohannon to allow him to transfer. And it'll be interesting to watch him this year. But you throw that in with Baylor just being really good on the offensive and defensive line, such like a stalwart of the game, even though that may be, running the football being the be-all, end-all in the game has kind of changed. I think they're going to be so sturdy there. Aranda will figure out a way to make that defense really, really salty again. And I like where Shapen is going as far as the quarterback situation goes. So I've got Baylor winning the league. And I'm going to go Oklahoma second. So as of right now, my prediction for the Big 12 championship game would be Baylor and Oklahoma. As much as I think Oklahoma is like a 9-3 kind of team, and that's led to a lot of consternation between me and the Sooner Nation on the old interwebs, much like anybody else who dares to say Oklahoma will go anything but 15-0 this year. I do think even at like a 9-3, 10-2 sort of level that they can be in the Big 12 championship game there. So I'll say Oklahoma, and really what I'm doing there is kind of almost giving in to the logo on the side of the helmet, championship DNA that they have running throughout that program, and being like, I've been sitting here saying they're like a 9-3 sort of team. If they're going to make the Big 12 championship game, it's probably them only losing 2 games in the league, right? So I don't think they're going to lose anything in the non-conference portion of the schedule. So then you're left with, all right, John, they actually are probably going 10-2 here as opposed to 9-3. But when it came down to it, I gave Oklahoma the bump. And that is largely based on reputation. I have K-State finishing third, and I see Joe. Joe, thank you for the donation. Joe says it will be your Cats and Oklahoma State in Dallas in December. Now, that would be fun as hell, and I'm here for that. I would love it. Would love, love, love that. Those two fan bases would fill that place up. It would be amazing. So I'm here for that, Joe. That's a great, great prediction. Not the one that I have here, if I'm trying to be honest with myself, but I've got K-State finishing third. I think K-State is also like a 9-3 caliber team where luck, injuries, etc., can push you one way or the other. Maybe you wind up 8-4, maybe you wind up 10-2, and then you are in the Big 12 championship game. You already heard my case earlier in the show for Adrian Martinez. I'll take K-State to finish third in the Big 12, just on the outside there. Oklahoma State, I mean, to be honest, I have them kind of in the same tier. By the way, what I would prefer to do is like tiers. I've got Baylor in tier 1, Oklahoma, K-State, Oklahoma State in tier 2, like all three together. So I think all three of those teams are pretty similar, pretty close in terms of where I would see them finishing in the Big 12 this year. Huge loss to lose Jim Knowles. And I love Derek Mason as well for Oklahoma State, but I mean, like that defense was just lights out for Oklahoma State last year. And I wonder what is going to happen there. And I still am leery of Spencer Sanders, much as like his skill set really dazzles me and entices me. I still, in big moments, worry about him. I know he had a really nice end of the year in the Fiesta Bowl last year, but until I see Spencer Sanders being a little bit more consistent, I'm going to be leery enough of that. So there's your 1 through 4. Baylor, Oklahoma, K-State, Oklahoma State. Now we're to tier 3 in my rankings here. Tier 3, I would go Iowa State and Texas in that order. So I've got Iowa State by a nose over Texas. These teams both to me feel very 7-5-y. And this actually would be, I think, probably higher on Iowa State than some would be because, look, Iowa State went 7-6 last year with all of that talent that they had, lost it all. And now after Brock Purdy, Breece Hall, et cetera, are gone, Mike Rose, I still have them going 7-5. And that is basically, this is a tip of the cap where I go kind of the opposite end of what you really hear usually on my Matt Campbell take. I think he's got a very high floor and a lower ceiling than a lot of people feel. That's really where I'm at on Campbell. So I don't think this will be some massive fallback year. I think he's very good at keeping a team tough and talented enough to at least be a bowl team. I don't see Iowa State slipping below that this year, even with all the talent that they're losing. I just don't see Campbell as a guy who has this super high upside where everybody thinks he's like the greatest coach in college football. I don't see that. I mean, Bill Snyder at K-State, tremendous turnaround job. He had a high floor, but he won 11 games 7 times. I don't see that type of ceiling out of Campbell. I do still see a high floor, though, so I'll put them in tier 3 and just above Texas. I mean, Texas is just like, I don't know what to do with them, and nobody knows what to do with them. Stuart Mandel has them finishing 4-8. Somebody in the coaches poll voted them to win the national championship. So there's really, I guess with that, I just arrived in the middle. I just thought I'll throw them in the middle somewhere, like 7-5, 6-6 range for Texas. I am not loving what their fall camp has been like here with the 2 injuries, the guys out for the year, the Alabama kid getting in trouble, Sark making the awkward announcement about Quinn Ewers when there were rumors that he was being beaten out by Hudson Card in practice. I don't love any of it if I'm a Texas fan. And it feels like the same issues are still there, very much like Nebraska. Like Nebraska makes all these changes, all this noise in the offseason, and they go out and they fart out the same effort on the field that they had been putting out for the last 4 years. That I'm feeling that sort of thing with Texas as well here. So I'll go Texas. I guess, what is that, 6th? Texas with a 6th place finish in the Big 12. Now we're to tier 4, which to me is Texas Tech and West Virginia. Texas Tech and West Virginia. Oh, I missed TCU. I'm sorry. I would throw TCU in tier 3. TCU is another one that's hard for me. I don't love the quarterback situation at TCU. Max Duggan, Chandler Morris. I don't know, man. Sonny Dykes was a kind of underwhelming hire to me. I felt like that was okay, kind of like a C hire. Not all that inspired to me, but I think it will be a step above Gary Patterson. Look, it was clear. I mean, I can remember watching the game in Manhattan. Gary Patterson was it just felt like he was washed. And I love the guy. I think he had a tremendous career. I don't mean to hate on him and his legacy, but it was clearly time for him to go. So I think just getting a little more modern in terms of what they're doing, that will help out TCU a lot. I'm just not expecting huge results from that quickly. I think it'll take a little bit of time there. They are tough. They're tough to predict, though, for me. But I just have them mixed in tier 3 with Iowa State, Texas, and TCU. And tier 4, I've got Texas Tech and West Virginia. Again, that's another one. Like, it's hard for me to suss out who's going to finish ahead of who there. And I know West Virginia fans, we already went through this. We had our issues. There was a lot of excitement after you got JT Daniels. And I said, not unreasonable to think that they could get to 8-4, but I didn't see anything beyond that. I mean, I'm still going to stand here with that sort of a stance here. I would see anywhere from like 5-7 to 8-4, but I'm leaning a bit on the lower end. Neil Brown I feel a little bit burned by Neil Brown because I thought he would be great. And I was very worried that K-State made the wrong choice in going Kleiman over Neil Brown there when they were both finalists for the job. But he's just been basically like a 500 coach. The offense has never really seemed to get going. JT Daniels has a world of potential, but I have not seen in Morgantown much evidence to suggest that Neil Brown's going to be the guy to really totally unlock this. And you combine that with just some of the holes on the team for West Virginia. I get it. There were some hits in the transfer portal, and there are reasons for optimism. I'm not saying there are not in Morgantown, but it feels to me like there are more question marks there than there are with some of these other teams. I mean, honestly, if you wanted to say like, hey man, you could throw them above Texas, sure. Like I probably could. I don't even know what to do with that. You could throw them above TCU. I really probably could because those are tough ones to figure out for me, but had to make a choice. I went West Virginia there. Texas Tech. I love Joey McGuire long-term, but again, how quick will those rewards come? Love his recruiting class for 2023. Those guys aren't going to be on campus here yet to play. I think there's somewhat of a culture change that needs to take place in Lubbock based on, really going back to Kingsbury and then pretty milquetoast guy there in Matt Wells for a couple of years. So I'm bullish on Tech long-term. Don't come after me, Cactus Mafia. But yeah, I would have Tech and West Virginia kind of in that same spot in tier 4, and then Kansas tier 5, which at this point, I feel like me saying that is actually like going against what the public perception is of Kansas, where most people would say, no, like Kansas is going, they will not be the last place team in the Big 12 this year. I still would have Kansas being the last place team in the Big 12 this year. I think maybe they wind up like 3-9, win a conference game or 2, and continue to show signs of competency and stepping toward competency for Lance Leipold. I think if they got to 4 wins or above, that's a tremendous season for Leipold and company, and that would represent a major, major accomplishment. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, but Kansas to me is in a spot where I'm just not going to overreact to Leipold, and I'm going to say, you've got to show me that you are not the last place team in the league before I will put any legitimate stock to that. Kansas they've earned that right where I just go Kansas last place in the Big 12 until I see otherwise, until proven otherwise. And I just think that's the reality. So there you go. That's the rundown. Juan says you're 4 picks for the college football playoff this year, then 2 dark horse candidates you think could make it. Oh boy. I mean, I focus so much more on the Big 12 than I do nationally because like the playoff thing, and this is where, I mean, I'll do it. I'm going to do it for you here. But this is where I just hate how the playoff dominates so much of like the national discussion with college football because it's so boring. Like, I mean, yeah, it seems like Alabama is a shoo-in. It seems to me like Ohio State is a shoo-in. Then beyond that, maybe a little bit more open, but I would say like Bama, Ohio State. I think the SEC would get a second in. I'll go Georgia. I don't love Clemson. I don't love Notre Dame. Frankly, I might be coming down to the Utah pick there if I were really going to do it. Yeah, give me Utah. You know what? Give me Utah. The cocky fans rejoice. The cockiest fans in conference realignment. Utah fans can rejoice. I will say they ripped through the Pac-12 unbeaten this year, and I will ride the Utah train and make them a selection there. But I already said I hate projections in general. I really don't like them with the playoff because that's just such a boring way to follow college football. There's so much that happens that means so much to so many people, as this channel proves, outside of just the national top 4 and what's happening with the playoff there. Dark horse, I guess I'm sorry, I forgot. Juan, you asked me for dark horses as well. Outside of that group, USC is a dark horse that I like. I love Lincoln. That's been well established here on this channel. I love Lincoln. Yes, he does have some very whiny, you-know-what tendencies, but I love Lincoln as a coach and what he produces on the field. And I love Caleb Williams. And I do think that's like a supernova about to take off there for SC. So I would throw them into that conversation as a dark horse. And I guess it would depend on what your definition of dark horse is. Utah being in the playoff might already take that cake. But yeah, I mean, Baylor sort of fits that mold, and I have them winning the Big 12 if Baylor is able to be a game or two better than what I think that they will be, then Baylor certainly could be there as well. So that's what I'll give you. That's what I will give you for college football playoff dark horse selections there. All right. I really do have to run. Got something coming up at 8:30 here today. So I'm going to take off. Oh, boy. Hawk Nation I see in here. John, by the way, Hawk Nation, my name is spelled with an H. Just a heads up. Also, you capitalized the J on that. John is too fake to admit that in the future, KU has a higher ceiling. What are we talking about there? KSU will be awesome. Okay, I don't even know. KU has a higher ceiling long-term than K-State in football. I mean, I don't see a single thing in recent memory that would indicate any of that. But, hey, Lance Leipold, baby. Go get him, Hawk Nation. Thank you for being here in the chat, everybody. We'll see about Wednesday. I really think I'm going to have to do the show on Thursday based on my schedule this week, which I know kind of puts you in a bind and kind of doesn't. I guess it depends. Would you prefer to have the live chat with Big 12 football or not? I know you'll be watching the games. I hope you'll still join me if I'm going to do the live show on Thursday night, which it looks like, again, that is what is going to have to happen. I apologize for having to do that, but instead of just skipping a show, I'll try to bring you on as we've got some football happening on Thursday. I see Wet Blanket. I'll be watching the Popes. Totally get it, man. If your team's playing, don't mess with it. Come back around when it's taped. I get it. I understand. But for everybody else, you want to do a little watch and talk. We can do that. The Venmo is John-Kurtz-4. If you were not here live and you want to support the channel, I would appreciate that. If you can all like the video before you get out of here, I would appreciate that as well. Alan, I'm going to be honest here, man. You're dead wrong. Alan says you're losing viewers with all this realignment stuff. Need to focus on actual football now. You come look at my analytics, Alan. I ain't no dummy, bud. I'm sorry. Alan, I'm sorry, man. You're an idiot. I'm sorry. You're an idiot. You only had 500 tonight. I mean, the chat was around 300 most of the time, first of all. And we didn't talk very much realignment. The tease to the video was about actual football. And most of the questions that I get, if you notice, were about realignment, which is where most of the interest generally lies. And over the course of doing this channel, no matter when it happens, realignment drives views 10x over actual football. So that's the reality. I always like to be honest with you guys to a fault. That's the reality of it. So I lean into the realignment more than perhaps sometimes I would want to, because it does drive the views, my friend. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Some realignment donations coming in here. Appreciate you guys. Michael says, I'm here for realignment. # go Cougs. Joe, thanks, John. Appreciate your show. Coming from a lot of texters. Good. The Cactus Mafia is not after me. Cactus Mafia, not after me. Love Tech. Just think it might take a year or two for Joey McGuire. And Matt says, hey, everybody, Texas Tech is in the Fox Sports Twitter Championship. Oh, that's good. That's good. Thank you, Matt. Yes. Go find the Fox College Football Twitter account. They do have Texas Tech, I believe, against Oklahoma, right? In the championship for basically fan base vote off. Go vote for Texas Tech, man. Let's go get the Red Raiders and Cactus Nation that championship. Go find the Fox College Football Twitter account and do that. I know I looked once before the voting had actually started. I'm not sure if it's actually started yet, but if it has, go vote. I will certainly do so as well. And Vanity Rose says $5 bet for TCU Colorado. I'll take the pack. Vanity Rose getting in with one there. Oh, more. Boy, the realignment support coming out. Realignment support coming out here at the end. Juan says realignment and then everything else. Go Cougs. Thank you, Juan. Thank you. I'm always going to be on top of that. And to be honest, like that is the fascinating part of college athletics right now. I know some people don't like it because it's changing the game, but the reality is, like, it's here and we got to talk about it. Browns and beers going to the Brawl Thursday. So I sadly won't be here. Yeah. Hey, Totally get it, man. Also, that ESP, I know what that stands for. I can't say the S part. I can't say the S part. It's eat, you know what, pit. All right. I'll give you one of those. Eat bleep pit. Sorry if there's a Pitt fan in there. But yes, I am ecstatic to watch that game on Thursday. So that'll be a lot of fun. Enjoy the hell out of that. I'm jealous. I wish I could be at that game. 100%. I wish I could be at that game. Take care, guys. Spread the word, friends and family, social media, etc. Whatever you can do to get the word out about the channel. I appreciate it. And we'll talk to you all soon.